Welcome to Vance Garage in Hannibal, Missouri. Dick Pappy Vance is known worldwide as Mr. International. Along with Steve Locke and Jeff Muring, they are the go-to people for all things relating to International Harvester vehicles and equipment. What follows are memories and a short tour of their shop in the spring of 2010.
Well, I'll start out in 1929. My dad was a big farmer in Illinois, and he had 5 hard hands working for him. And they absolutely, when the crash come in 29, he lost everything he had. Everything. They just closed him out completely. And I had a little bit of money in the bank that people had given me for a savings, you know, and even that got disappeared during the Depression time. And then there just wasn't any work to be had, just wasn't anywhere. And my dad bought a 24 International S24 to haul coal with. My granddad was a coal miner, and my uncle was a coal miner. And so they was buying coal from granddad, and they was hauling that coal from Clayton, Illinois, and Mount Sterling, Illinois, to Quincy, Illinois. And a lot of times we had to pack the coal up the steps, 2 or 3 stories high. And we sell the coal for $3 a ton, and give $1 a ton for the coal at the coal bank. So that was a big leadway, $2 to play with the gasoline and keep the tires and stuff up. And that my granddad's coal mine had to ford a creek, pretty steep. And he had that little S24 with a 3-speed transmission in it. And my uncle had a Model T with 2 transmissions in it, Chevrolet. And my dad's S24 wouldn't pull up there with 3 tons of coal up that bank. And my uncle would back down there and put a chain on him and take him all over the hill. Then when we got to Quincy and unloaded the coal, that went on for several years. They'd run the Model T up on the International, because the International would run 30 miles an hour and his Model T was only run 21 miles an hour. And they saved gas and they rode backwards and forwards. And that old S24 had an emergency brake about this tall, standing up in the middle, and gas tank in the cab. And we didn't have no isinglass on the door. And we took a barrel robe in the wintertime and piled it over that big stick and the gear shift lever and put a lantern under there to keep our feet warm, you know. And but back in that day and age, it was rough, and it never started getting no better until 38, 39 is when it started picking up again. But I'll tell you this much, we're in a recession right now, and if it goes ahead and materialize, 1929 will be a Boy Scout cap compared to what it will be now.
So that old truck was your first experience with international trucks?
Yes. And he wouldn't have had that if he could have found anything else to do. But it served the purpose for us, and we didn't go hungry. But getting back to when I first started working on vehicles was just for the farmer friends. And they usually had a Ford or a Chevrolet truck or a Fortune tractor or a regular farm something like that. And I didn't have very many tools at all. And it had to do with what I had. I used a penny postcard to set the points and to set the dials and the whole ball of wax. Had them in a gunny sack. I'd pack them on my back, my tools, when I went to help the farmers out. Then the first time that I ever completely rebuilt an engine from the ground up, it was a 36 Studebaker President, 8-cylinder straight, and got it all put together. I couldn't turn it over. And my dad said, well, we'll hitch a team onto it and we'll pull it and start it. So we stepped on the starter and he pulled it with a team that still slid the wheels. And so he got in the truck and went to town and went into a man's garage. And he said, this boy has overhauled his Studebaker and he can't turn it over. He don't know what went wrong. And the first thing the garage owner said, sir, what did you do? I said, I put rings and bearings and ground without it. He said, how much end gap did you give the pistons? I said, end gap? What's end gap? Well, he said, that's what your problem is. He said, you know you have to use 3 thousandths to the end. But, ring butt. And so my dad said to him, he said, what will you take to straighten that Studebaker out? So that was my beginning in the automotive world of farm tractors and different things like that. And then I worked out from place to place, from time, and then in World War II, my first work full-time was in the 1939, and I was working for a man that had bought a brand new 37 D2 red International pickup with black fenders on it. And when I saw that, I thought that was the most beautiful truck that I ever saw, and I still haven't changed my mind one bit. And it just passed on, and then I went to the Army, and they found out what I could do. They put me in the shop. I had very, very little training in physical training. I had very little of it. Sent me to the shop, and for 4 or 5 weeks, I had a crew going, and then that was in 1943, then I was shipped from Fort Knox, Kentucky to Camp Camel to help them set up a new shop down there for it was just a very small camp there then. It was Camp Camel. Now it's Fort Camel. And we run in there to set up the tools, the lathes, the grinding machines, and everything in there, and get them in working order, so when the new school bunch started coming in, they'd have something to work with. And some of those fellows, there was 5 of us, went to set up that shop, and some of them was right at the age of almost 50, 51, 52 in there, and still having to stay in the Army. And one of them was a Chrysler dealer out in Kansas, Colorado, and he done his own shop work and everything. And those guys, I didn't know anything but Ford. And so then we had another guy from North Carolina that was a machinist, and he shared a whole lot. And I learned more from them 4 other fellas than I would ever gain again, just because they were so much older than there I was, just a pup. And that's the beginning. When I got out of the Army in 1945 on Thanksgiving Day, I was going to get some of that rocking chair money they was talking about. I went down to the down to the courthouse on Monday morning to sign up for some rocking chair money. They all said, we can't give you no rocking chair money. I said, there's 5 garages right here in this town. It's dying for help, mechanics. So I went down, because I had a Ford then, and I went down to the Ford garage where this was at. And he said, when do you want to go to work? I said, I'm ready. He said, be here in the morning at 6 o'clock with your coveralls on and your tools. So we worked from 6 until 6 and 30 minutes off for dinner. And so it went on, and a couple of years later, we got a new manager of that store. And he was a shave tail. military man in charge of the shop where I was at. And I put a new 100 horsepower engine in a 34 Ford truck, ton-and-a-half truck. And I never always just reached through the window, turn the key. That key was on the steering gear on the side. So I just turn it like that, you know. Got it all up, got the timing and everything all set on it. And the guy, the contractor who was wanting that truck, he was sitting there waiting, and anytime we had anything that wasn't completely finished right then, you went on and to finish it. Whether it was 7 o'clock or 8, you had to finish the job. And so I reached in there and started that engine up. It was real beautiful. Got in it and stepped on it to move it out, and it had a terrible knock in it, brand new 100 West. They had come out with a bulletin, and they never showed it to us in the shop. Anybody that's putting in the 100 horse truck block needed to take a ball peen hammer and then ding in the pan on the front to make room for the counterbalance. When you push on the clutch, just that extra 1,000 or 2, you know, and it was bumping. And that little shaved tail come back there, and he said, "You are supposed to be a mechanic, and you can't even put a new engine in it without it knocking." I said, "No, I know I can't, but I'll tell you what I'll do. You have my check ready, because as soon as I can get them boxed up, I'll be through the office to get my check. And furthermore, I'll never turn another wrench for no man." And then, you know, you don't ever want to say that. And anyhow, I boxed up my tools and went back to doing some trucking of my own. And I was going to become a millionaire, was my thought, but it never has militarized yet. Except one thing. The Lord says one soul is worth more than the whole world, so maybe I superseded that 1,000, that $1 million, I don't know.
Yeah.
But all I do know is this: I was going to try to make money in a hurry. And I bought 2 trucks, 2 K5s, and my dad had a Chevrolet, and we was hauling everything that was loose and anything we get broke loose. We worked for Person Hollowell Log Company in over in Ohio, Indiana, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and Harm Walker's Deluxe in Peoria, Illinois, and J.W. Donaldson in St. Louis. And we was doing real good, doing my own work and keeping my trucks up and Dad's trucks up. And so Mr. Donaldson called me in the office one morning, and when I was in there unloading, he said, "We're going to have to cut your haul." He said, "The bottom has dropped out, and we're going to have to cut your haul." I said, "No, Mr. Donaldson, I can't accept that." I said, "These trucks that I've got, they've got to be working." And he said, "That's what I'm telling you about. You need to take that cut." And I said, "Let me tell you something else. When things were good, I paid 2 and 3 payments every month on these trucks. They belong to me, Mr. Donaldson, and I'll take them home and burn them if I have to." And then so I brought them home, parked them out along the highway up at Palmar, right there in the part of Palmar, Missouri. And he said, "Oh, your trucks is so big, you'll never be able to sell them." And I had a D50 with a K8 grill and hood on it. And I had 2 K5s and 1 K6. And an EH Mac. And I parked the big trucks at Vance Garage in Palmyra or out on the highway, and they didn't stay there 2 weeks till they was gone. And the first one thing and another brought it on. I said, well, I'll build a garage. So I built a little garage in Palmyra, and I started working on over-the-road trucks and farm tractors and the whole ball whack again. And when I built up there, it was legal to have used cars that you was using parts off of to have it in. And they changed the ordinance of the city. And they said, we'll give you 60 days to get rid of every one of these wrecks that you got. And they said you can't even burn them on wash day, and another day, it was 2 days a week, you can't burn them. And I said, well, we'll take care of that. So I sold everything I had to a friend of mine down south of Hannibal here. He was in the wrecking business. I just sold him a lock, barrel, and all to one man. And I said, now the city says you can't burn any part of these. And he said, I want to tell you something. That belongs to me now, he said, and they are sellable merchandise. And I'll do whatever I have to do to get them moved. And he did. And then I come to Hannibal here and built this place, and then just kept adding on to it from years, working on the over-the-road tractors and stuff. And then I got tied up with Marshall Brother Trucking Company to take care of their stuff right here in this locale, and was doing pretty good. And then I took on L.W. Riney Construction Company. He had 40 cement mixers, Dodge and Ford, Dodge and International. And I helped him for over 30 years, and that 2 customers was about all I needed. Marshall Brothers Trucking Company, the biggest one in the state of Missouri, and 40 concrete mixers to work on that. That kept me busy. And then every once in a while, an over-the-road driver like Mid-American or somebody like that was running trucks both ways through Hannibal. And I used to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. They'd break down and blow a clutch or something. And we'd get them in, put them in the shop, put a clutch in them, and get them on the road. And it seemed like truck drivers were different then than they are now. I don't know, I've not messed with them at all. But I was working right over there in that stall right there one morning, around 3 o'clock, and he was setting up in the cab, and it was one of these Hendricksons with a setback engine. And I asked him what he said about, put a clutch in it. I said, will you take a hold of this gear shift lever and steady it like this as I slip that transmission in from the bottom? He said, I'm not a quick driver. I'm not a quick man. And I said, all right, I'll get it. I put it in. He went over here to the telephone about 5 o'clock that morning, and he said, this man's got my truck ready. I'm going to sign the ticket on it. But he got grease on my cool cushion. I got grease on his cool cushion. And it's not all been joy, but it's different. We've had a good one, a very good one. And God's been real good to us, real good. And Marshall Brothers took the bankrupt law, and they paid me every penny they owed me. And L.W. Riney, that I worked for 30 years plus on his cement mixer, he passed away, left it all to his boys, 2 boys, tremendous cement mixing plant, and a construction company of K6, 7s, and 8s, Caterpillars. And in 5 years, they went up. went out completely totally. They had all that stuff given to them. And I've seen this happen before. But anyhow, making the long story short, this used to be kind of the center of 36 here and 24. And Mid-American, I took care of their trucks. I took care of, once in a while, some Now trucks out of Kansas City. And once in a while, some trucks out of Merchant Motor Freight that was run between Minneapolis, Minnesota, and St. Louis. And they had all K8s with 10 engines in them. And we helped them quite a bit. But being an independent, you spend a lot of time at night. And in the winter time, when it was below zero or even zero, trucks coming out of Florida, coming out of the southern part of Louisiana, the southern part of Texas, come up here in this cold weather, and they really run into problems. Their airlines would freeze up all the way from the compressor to the tank. And I'd go out there and take the lines off, bring them down to the shop where it was warm and thaw them out, take them back and put them on. And you know, now they've got a lot of sophisticated stuff that they don't have that problem. Air dryers and everything on these tractors. But anyhow, I wouldn't give anything to go back through it again. But I would, because that's all I know to do. And then I got to, I was restoring Cord automobiles, C-O-R-D. And it got so scarce on the parts and stuff. Then I started in messing with the Antique Internationals because I knew a little bit about them. And here I'm 86 years old, still have to work 60 hours a week to pay my medical bills and one thing another. And that's all we're doing now is just building engines for Antique Internationals. And once in a while somebody will twist my arm and I'll rebuild a flathead for them or something, but not very often. And International's been awful good to us. The whole family's been good to us. And I ruined Jeff here.
Yeah.
You know, completely ruined him.
Yeah.
He used to hang around here quite a bit when he was a kid, you know. So I adopted him, not legally, but. And now he's got 3 or 4 tractors. He got 3 or 4 trucks, and he wears a 3-diamond cap.
Would you like to tell a story about the KB5 Widow?
Oh yeah, he bought his first truck was a KB5, and he got the fever and he started rebuilding that himself, and he was doing a real good job. His wife come over here one day. She said, "Mommy, I don't know what I'm going to do." He said, "Jeff, he don't pay no attention to me anymore at all." And when we sat down at the table, all he talks about is K5, K5, K5. And she said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." And I said, "Well, ma'am, you just got a new name from right here from old Pappy. We're going to call you the K5 Widow." And from that day on, and it still holds true.
Yeah.
The K5 Widow. But she got used to that. So then she wanted a truck of her own. And so we made arrangement for him to start in on an E2 pickup. And she won't drive it because I might get a scratch on it. But I think Jeff's kind of glad of that anyhow.
Yeah, probably. Can you remember a few stories when you were hauling stave bolts with the old K5?
Well, they wasn't very speedy. And the thing of it is, I'd get up at 2 o'clock every morning. I'd have my load already loaded and get up at 2 o'clock in the morning so that I could be in St. Louis at the sawmill at 7 o'clock when they opened, and then I'd unload and get back in time to load up another load. when I was working for J.W. Ellison Company. And then in 1949, I bought a brand new KBS6, 5-speed over, and was hauling with 2 trucks. Then the first thing you knew, I bought a D50 with a K8 front end on it, and the EH Mac, and had them all busy, real busy, doing good, and working too. And so when Mr. Donaldson told me that the bottom had dropped out of the stay bolts, he said, you'll have to take a cut in your hauling. I said, no, we can't stand it. And so then I had one K8. I leased it to Warsaw Trucking Company, and the driver I had here was a real good driver, and he went with it. And they paid the driver's wages, and they paid the gasoline and service calls, the service part of it. And I hadn't got no check from him. And he was going every day and every day and every day at night. He got it, and so one day after about 6 months, I got my first check from Warsaw Trucking Company. 21,000 miles we put on that K8, and we got $210 back. And the next day, the driver called me out of St. Louis. He said, I'm in St. Louis loading out a load of paper for Quincy, Illinois. I said, you just back that trailer anywhere you can get it parked and leave it, because I donated my last dollar to Warsaw Trucking Company. And that's the way life has been. I just quit worrying about the $1 million and just taking care of service work altogether.
You never did run those internationals overloaded any time, did you?
I didn't know you could overload an international. But when I got the new K6, and I had a 6-foot rack on the back, standing up, and we used to pile that stuff clear up to the top and tapered it off like that. And so one morning, I used to leave him up at the filling station in Palomar, all loaded, and all I'd do is get there about 2 o'clock or a little after and go to St. Louis. And gets pulled out, State Patrol. He said, sir, you got a terrible load on that truck. I said, yeah, it's a pretty good load. Well, he said, I'll tell you what, only a couple miles out of the way, you just followed me over to the weigh scales. And I followed him over to the weigh scale, and right on there, and I was over 20,000 pounds on the back axle, 12,000 pounds on the front axle. He said, you'll pull right out here to the side, and you'll unload them until you get 18,000 pounds on the back axle, and that you get 10,000 pounds on the front axle. And when I got through unloading, I didn't think I had any steady bolts left on the truck. So I went to St. Louis that day, and after I finally got unloaded again, I bought a K8 International and put a trailer on it. Then I did the same thing the Orslin brothers used to do here. You could haul more weight in Illinois than you could in Missouri. And they'd send their tractor and trailers from Kansas City over here, going to Chicago, and then they'd send another freight truck with enough. They'd have 18,000 pounds here, but they could go more than that over there in Illinois. I think it was 20,000. They'd send a small truck over there, and then they'd load them out for Peoria and Chicago and all and that way. But then we started just taking the trailer and then take a straight truck and we pulled it up on the scales at the farmer's elevator up at Palmar, and we drive another truck up there, and we loaded those, finished topping them out right exactly on the axle, front and back on the trailer, you know. We was hauling every one that we could. And after about 6 months, they quit messing with us. They found out we was going to be legal, you know. But that's neither here nor there. They've International Antique Trucks has always been good to me, and they're still good to me. I had that a D50 with a K8 hood and grill on it. It had a 5-speed, it didn't have a 2-speed. And I was pulling a trailer with it, hauling stay boat. And I had an EH Mac, and that had the 10-speed motto in. And we'd hit them soft hills in the gravel up in North Missouri, back up in there, way up in there. I put the old Mac out in front and a chain on the back because it had enough power to take its own load and the K8 both. And pull them up on the level and get them out on the blacktop, and then the K8 would outrun the Mac. But that's the way we lived and worked. Kind of poor, but we made it.
The school of hard knocks.
Absolutely.
Well, I remember one story you was telling me not too long ago. You'd stopped with the OK5 in the shade, and maybe you was going to eat your dinner or something, and the truck started growing.
It started raising up on the... I had a load of limestone on the K5. It was hot, like it's going to be here in a few days. And I was loading out of Marblehead, Illinois, and going to Mount Sterling with it all the time. And so I pulled up at the 5 Points and pulled off that side on that asphalt parking lot there to rest and eat my lunch, drink a soda. And I was laying in the shade, and I could feel that truck. I looked over it, and that thing was growing like you can't believe. It blew the tar out on the bottom. You know, and it lifted that truck up, and it looked like it lifted it that much. When it exploded, it had 7.5 tons on it. And those kind of things are some of the knocks, hard knocks that we had. Very, very few completely.
Well, going back to the real early days, going back to the real early days, you were talking about all you had to go through to get the old truck started. I think it might have been that coal truck in the winter when it was real cold.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That S24.
Yeah.
We drained the water out of the radiator, and we drained the oil out. Took them in the house and set them close to the old wood stove that we had in our home. And that of a morning we'd go out with a tea kettle full of real hot water, and we would put the warm water back in the radiator and cover it up with a bare robe and put the warm oil in it. Then I'd step on the starter and my dad would crank it, and that's the way we got it started most of the time. Once in a while I got bullheaded and wouldn't do it, so we'd have to get a team out of the barn, harness them and come up and pull it. And my uncle was hauling with us then, and he had a Model T, and we'd get over to his house of a morning, about 4 o'clock or 10 minutes after, something like that. And he said if you had a good truck, you wouldn't have to do all that kind of work. And we caught him at his trick. He had the spark plug screwed out of his Model T, and he's taking a teaspoonful of ether in each hole, putting the plugs back on it. Then when he got through eating breakfast, he'd go out there and this is the way a good truck's supposed to start. He'd say, pow! He'd run off perfect, you know. We couldn't figure out how he's getting that thing started. but we caught him. But it wasn't nothing then. We used to get lots of water in the gas line. And I have had to take the gas lines off of different trucks that I've worked on, all the way from the tank, all the way to the carburetor, including the fuel pump, and unfreeze them, and put a can of alcohol in the gas tank. And we kept all with a Ford truck, had a lot of condensation down in the pan. We used to put about a half a pint of the coolant that we used to use, plain old alcohol. We'd put it in the pan, pour it in the oil, so that the sludge from the wouldn't lock up the oil pump in the evening. And people says that was the good old days. I disagree with that. Now it's the good old days. But anyhow, we made a living. We never did go hungry. But I do know right now that the market is off so much on new build engines that we've got two that's been sitting there for over a year, and outside of being run once in a while they all got 4 hours of break-in time on them. I don't even get a nibble on them anymore. It used to be somebody drive up out there, where can I find this, where can I find that? I said, right over there, we'll load you up. Give me some green stamps and I'll just load you right up. But that day's gone. Recessions. The difference between a recession and a depression is when you lose your job, it's a depression. When your neighbor loses his job, that's a recession. Well, I come in contact with Steve a long, long time ago, and he was working for Pappy Vance. He worked for GMC, other people, but it was all GM parts, GM vehicles. And every once in a while, I would hit a snag on some of this modern stuff that was coming up, you know, in the early 60s. And then when they started in fuel injection a little bit later, and every once in a while, I'd hit a snag and I'd make them trip over to General Motors to talk to Steve about it.
We had a cab reground, got all hard seats in it, all new valves. Oh, it's done over a period of time. I didn't do it all at one time.
Okay, what do you got here?
Well, it's the 308, so it's a little bit later model than that one there, but it'll fit in any K model, K6 and up, the bigger trucks. And it's been bored and cranked, reground and everything. Well, everything new. It's got new hard seats in it, new valves in it.
Where'd it come from?
Where'd the engine come from? Out of Nebraska.
How'd you guys get a hold of it?
Well, we had a man here wanting one, and he had a 282. So we found this one in Nebraska. He went and got it, or I had it shipped here, and we used crank and everything out of the 308 and made his 282 a 308. So we had this one here, and we had a crankshaft back there. Make a 308 out of it. I kind of cheated a little bit on this one.